It happens late at night. You're alone. The room is still, but your mind is restless. Your thumb scrolls without thought, chasing something you can't name: images, faces, bodies, illusions. You tell yourself it's harmless, just lust. Just one more fantasy to ease the tension, one more body to imagine holding. Everyone does it, right? It's normal. It's biological. It's what men do. But if you were deeply honest with yourself, honest beyond the excuses, beyond the story you've rehearsed in your mind 1,000 times, you'd feel something else. A truth quietly pulsing underneath it all. The hollowness. Not just afterward, when the screen goes dark and the dopamine fades, but during. Even as you indulge the desire, a subtle ache follows close behind. You reach for connection, but feel further away from yourself. You touch the fantasy, but something sacred inside you goes untouched. Because this isn't really about lust, not at the core. What you're experiencing isn't raw desire, it's grief. It's loneliness. It's the echo of something spiritual inside you that has been buried, ignored, numbed for so long it no longer speaks in words, but in craving. A hunger that skin can't satisfy. A thirst that pleasure can't quench. You aren't chasing sex. You're chasing soul. And you won't find it in pixels or passing strangers. Carl Jung saw this long before the modern world tried to repackage it as harmless indulgence. People will do anything, he said, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And that's what this really is. Not a symptom of too much desire, but too little presence. Not an overflow of lust, but an avoidance of what lives inside the silence. You're not escaping boredom, you're escaping yourself. But here's the sacred truth. The ache is not your enemy. It's your invitation. That grief is not shameful. It's meaningful. That emptiness is not a curse. It's a call. Every night you return to the screen, what you're really searching for is not pleasure, but wholeness. Not escape, but return. And the moment you can sit in that silence, not run from it, not medicate it, you'll realize that what you've been looking for in her body was always waiting in your own soul. Chapter 1. The Illusion of Desire. We think we want her body, her warmth, her voice in the dark, the curve of her lips, the softness of her skin, the wild invitation in her eyes. But beneath the surface of lust lies a deeper hunger, one that we rarely name. What we truly crave is aliveness, the spark that reminds us we still exist, that we matter, that we're not sleepwalking through a life of quiet desperation. We chase the fantasy because it feels like a cure for boredom, for loneliness, for the aching silence that stretches behind our eyes when the world goes quiet. Lust becomes a mask, an acceptable distraction, a socially sanctioned way to avoid our own emptiness. We tell ourselves it's just what men do, that it's natural, that we're hardwired for this chase. But night after night, the high fades. The thrill is temporary. The body beside you grows familiar, and then invisible. You stare at the ceiling, and the void returns. Heavier now. Louder. Not because you did something wrong, but because you were asking the wrong question. You weren't looking for sex. You were looking for yourself. You weren't trying to feel someone else. You were trying to feel anything. What you're really seeking isn't pleasure. It's presence. Not another body to escape into, but your own soul calling you back home. That ache in your chest, that restless feeling that no climax can quiet, that's your spirit begging for reconnection. Not with her, but with you. Carl Jung understood this. He wrote that desire is not always about the object, it's about the projection. The craving is not a sin, it is a signal. A flare shot into the sky from the depths of your unconscious. It's telling you something urgent. You've lost connection to your body, to your emotions, to your mission, to the deeper truth of who you are. You think you want to be wanted, but really, you want to be whole. You want to be seen, not just by her eyes, but by your own. You want to feel purpose coursing through your veins, to move with intention, to wake up with fire again. Until you turn inward, no amount of bodies will satisfy you, because what you're chasing isn't her, it's the man you forgot you could be. And that man isn't found between the sheets. He's waiting in the silence you keep avoiding. Chapter 2. Chasing her is chasing yourself. When a man is disconnected from his own soul, the world becomes a screen onto which he projects all that he has lost within himself. He no longer knows how to access his tenderness, so he sees it in her. He has forgotten how to be vulnerable, so he believes she will open that door for him. He has silenced his own emotional world, so he seeks it vicariously through her presence, her warmth, her softness. He begins to crave her not because of who she truly is, but because she reflects a part of him he can no longer reach. The very qualities he once possessed, he now believes live exclusively outside of him. And so the chase begins, not for her, but for the pieces of himself he left behind. You tell yourself you want her smile, her attention, her body, her love, but beneath that longing lies a deeper truth. What you're really seeking is the part of you that knows how to feel again, the part of you that can cry without shame, sit in silence without fear, and love without needing to control. You're not chasing her. You're chasing a home within yourself. You're not trying to possess her. You're trying to recover the intimacy you abandoned when you learned that emotions made you weak, that stillness made you lazy, and that softness made you less of a man. In Jungian psychology, this missing piece has a name: the anima, the inner feminine. She is the feeling, intuitive, creative aspect of the male psyche. She is the river of emotion, the quiet whisper of inner knowing, the softness that tempers strength. But when a man suppresses her, when he fears her, mocks her, or banishes her, she doesn't disappear. She simply shifts. She goes underground and begins to haunt him in ways he doesn't understand. Lust becomes frantic. Relationships become chaotic. Desires become insatiable. And the women he pursues become symbols, mirrors of a self he no longer remembers how to embody. This is why no amount of sex satisfies. No amount of attention feels like enough. You consume more images, more fantasies, more bodies, but the hunger only grows, because the emptiness isn't physical, it's existential. It's not sex you're craving, it's selfhood. You want to come home to yourself, but you've forgotten the way. And instead of turning inward, you turn to her. You ask her to feel for you, to complete you, to validate you, to carry the burden of your own disconnection. But she can't. No woman can. Until you reclaim the lost parts of yourself, until you make peace with the tender, intuitive, feeling man inside you, you will continue to chase shadows. You'll think it's love, but it's only longing. You'll think it's her, but it's always been you. Because what you're chasing is not a woman, it's wholeness, integration, inner union. To become a man in the fullest sense is not to dominate your emotions. It is to include them, to feel, to grieve, to express, to embrace your softness without apology. When you do this, the chase ends. Not because you no longer desire, but because you finally understand what desire was trying to teach you all along. You are already enough. You always were. You just forgot. And now it's time to remember. Chapter 3. When lust replaces purpose. The cycle doesn't break itself. It continues in silence, in secrecy, in the dark corners of the day and the even darker ones of the night. One more video, one more scroll, one more late-night message that starts with hope and ends with emptiness. You tell yourself it's harmless, just a release, just a moment. But each moment chips away at something you can't quite name, until you feel more hollow than you did before it started. At first it feels like a relief, a quick hit of stimulation, a spark of aliveness in an otherwise dull routine. But that spark fades fast, and in its place is a gnawing sense of disconnection, not just from others, but from yourself. You start to lose more than your time. You lose your clarity, your creativity, your motivation. You find it harder to focus, harder to feel present, harder to care. Lust becomes a shortcut to a feeling you haven't earned, a counterfeit version of vitality that steals the very energy meant for building your real life, your art, your legacy. And that's the real tragedy. Lust hijacks the energy meant for your mission. It seduces the part of you meant to create and repurposes it for escape. You were made to build something, your vision, your voice, your value, but instead you trade that calling for a dopamine drip that leaves you more numb than inspired. You want to feel alive, but aliveness requires risk, requires effort, requires staying awake. Lust, instead, puts you to sleep with your eyes wide open. Carl Jung warned us about this. When lust becomes separated from the soul, it doesn't just distort how we relate to others, it begins to distort how we relate to ourselves. You stop seeing others as whole people, and you stop seeing yourself as capable of depth. You avoid eye contact not because you're shy, but because you fear being seen. You crave closeness, but recoil when it shows up. You exchange the vulnerability of real intimacy for the illusion of control. You would rather command a fantasy than risk being rejected by something real. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the fantasy becomes easier than reality, more predictable, more convenient, but far more costly. The cost isn't just your time, it's your potential, your presence, your self-worth. You stop believing in your ability to feel deeply, to love well, to pursue meaning. And in that spiritual bankruptcy, you begin to settle for imitation, fake connections, fleeting highs, pixelated bodies on a glowing screen. You weren't born addicted to bodies, you were born craving something far more sacred: connection, presence, to be felt, to be held, to be known. Trace that hunger back far enough, and you'll see it was never about sex. It was about significance, about the desire to be seen without performance, to be loved without needing to earn it, to feel at home in your own skin, with your own heart, in your own story. Lust only ever pretended to be the answer. The truth is, it was always a signal, a flare from the soul saying, I'm still here. Don't forget me. So ask yourself, not in shame, but in honesty, what are you really chasing? What dream did you abandon when this cycle became your comfort? What purpose have you been delaying, hiding from, numbing away? Because the same fire that burns in lust is the fire that fuels greatness. The only question is whether you will waste it or channel it. Chapter 4. From Fragmentation to Integration. Carl Jung once wrote, I must learn that the dregs of my thoughts and dreams are the speech of my soul. These aren't just poetic words. They're a key to understanding what most men run from their entire lives. When lust surges without warning, irrational and overpowering, it's easy to blame it on her curves, her smile, her energy. But if you're honest, you'll see it has far less to do with her and far more to do with what's broken and buried within you. These eruptions of desire are not sins to suppress, but signals to interpret. They are messages from the forgotten parts of yourself, parts you've exiled to survive, to succeed, to appear strong. This is the real work, to slow down and ask the uncomfortable question, what is this desire trying to distract me from? Because behind every craving is a wound, a moment of neglect, a childhood ache, a silent shame. Maybe it's the feeling of not being enough, or the fear of being unloved without performance. And if you don't have the courage to face that pain, you'll keep feeding the habit, video after video, fling after fling. But you'll never touch the hurt. You'll only deepen the hollow. But healing doesn't come through repression. It doesn't come by guilting yourself, shaming your body, or pretending you've transcended desire. Healing comes through integration, through turning toward those wounded parts and saying, I see you. I will no longer ignore you. I am willing to carry all of me. That's what integration means. Not perfection, but wholeness. A homecoming to yourself. The masculine and the feminine, the wounded and the wise, the child and the man, all in communion. When you begin to reconnect with the parts of yourself that you cast into the shadows, your softness, your fear, your grief, something unexpected happens. Lust begins to change. It becomes less compulsive, less chaotic. It softens, it matures, it stops being a trap and starts becoming a bridge, a sacred fire that doesn't burn you down but lights the path forward. The very energy you once wasted becomes the fuel to create, to love, to lead. It transforms from a cry of emptiness into a song of wholeness. This is what Jung uncovered in The Red Book, not a condemnation of desire, but a descent into it, an exploration of its meaning, and ultimately, a revelation that the soul doesn't speak in doctrines and rules, but in symbols and longing. And if you're brave enough to listen, you'll hear something beautiful beneath your lust, not filth, not shame, but a cry for home, a cry for self. You've never been too far gone, you've only been fragmented, but every part of you still waits for reunion. And the journey back is not about killing desire, it's about turning it into something sacred. That's the path, that's the work, that's the way home. So before you open that app again, before your fingers reach for the screen, or you craft another message hoping for validation, for a moment of heat to fill the coldness inside, pause. Just pause. Not with shame, not with guilt, but with curiosity. Because something deeper is happening beneath the surface. This isn't just about desire, it never was. Ask yourself not to accuse, but to awaken. Is this truly lust, or is this loneliness in disguise? Is this about connection or escape? Is it a longing to be with someone, or a cry to come back home to yourself? These are not easy questions, but they are necessary ones, because the cycle doesn't end by force, it ends by understanding. If you don't stop and look within, you'll keep running. You'll keep mistaking hunger for love and fantasy for intimacy. You'll keep reaching for bodies, not realizing what you're really starving for is your own presence, your own attention, your own wholeness. And the tragedy isn't just in the addiction, it's in what you're missing while chasing it. The chance to be fully here, alive, rooted, real. But something shifts the moment you choose to face yourself instead of fleeing. When you hold space for the ache rather than numbing it. When you listen to the wound rather than silencing it with stimulation. That's where healing begins, not by destroying desire, but by reclaiming it. By allowing it to lead you inward, back to the places you've ignored, neglected, or misunderstood. And in that quiet, something sacred appears, not just self-control, not just discipline, but peace. A kind of peace no body, no screen, no temporary pleasure can imitate, a peace born from reunion, a presence that cannot be taken, because it's finally yours. So the next time the urge rises, remember this. The body is not the enemy. The craving is not the curse. It is a compass. One that, if you're willing to follow it inward, will guide you not toward another fleeting high, but toward the one thing you've always been seeking.